Welcome to the Peak Performance and Peak Satisfaction podcast with Master Executive Coach Sherry Gregoff. Sherry helps business people perform better, get rewarded handsomely, and actually enjoy their work. After having her own career turnaround, she now helps other high-powered business professionals experience the same. Join the movement to work differently.
Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. Today is going to be a little bit different. Usually on this podcast, we jump right into an idea or a tool that will help you do work and life better. Today, I want to tell you why I care so much about this work in the first place. If you've ever wondered why I get so fired up about helping people love their work again, this is the story. I don't share it because I think my story is unique. I share it because I think parts of it might sound a lot like yours. For years, I believed something that I now think is completely wrong. I believed success had to cost me something. Maybe my health, maybe my relationships, maybe my peace of mind. I never would have said those words aloud, but I lived like they were true. Years ago, if you had looked at my life from the outside, you probably would have thought I had everything together. I had a career that I was proud of. I worked with brilliant people. I had a husband I adored, 2 incredible boys, and opportunities I never imagined I'd have when I first started working. But behind the scenes, work had quietly become the center of my life. My mind was on it all the time. I complained to my husband more than I wanted to. I wasn't showing up for my kids the way I hoped I would. I looked forward to Friday night because it meant I could finally decompress. Then sometime on Sunday afternoon, the dread would start creeping back in. The part that bothered me wasn't that I was working hard. I've never been afraid of hard work. The part that bothered me was that I didn't like who I was becoming. The hardest part was that I honestly couldn't see another way. Looking back, I think my life changed because of 3 wake-up calls. The first came from watching people I deeply respected. Over the years, I watched several close colleagues leave the business after long and successful careers. One retirement celebration has stayed with me ever since. A colleague stood up, raised a glass, and thanked her for always putting her work family ahead of her real family. It was heartfelt, but heartbreaking. I remember thinking, I never want those words said about me. Not because there's anything wrong with loving our work. I've always loved what I do. But because I suddenly saw where that road could lead if I wasn't careful. Another colleague told me that when she shared the news with her parents that she was leaving the company, they cried. Not because they were sad, but because they were relieved. For years, they had worried she was going to work herself into a heart attack. Another colleague told me something his family said while they were on a trip together after he retired. They told him they finally had him back, that even when he had been on vacation with them over the years, he was never really there. His mind had always been somewhere else. I've been around business long enough to know difficult decisions aren't personal. Companies change, leaders change, markets change. That wasn't the lesson I took from those moments of multiple retirements. The lesson was much more personal. I asked myself a question I had never asked before. What if success was costing me the very things and people I was working so hard for? What if I woke up one day with a great career, but regrets that I could never undo? That question stayed with me. Then came the second wake-up call. Around the same time, I started seeing just how heavy the pressure around me had become. I found myself calling 911 more than once for medical emergencies at work. Whether stress was the proven cause of those emergencies or not, they made me stop and think. I watched one colleague's life get saved because someone nearby knew how to use a defibrillator. I attended the funeral of another colleague who never made it to retirement. Then a good friend and colleague died by suicide. I remember hearing the news while I was sitting in the office. I got up and walked outside because I couldn't catch my breath. It shook me to my core. It made me realize that we often have no idea what someone else is carrying. Not long after that, I had my own wake-up call. I was messing around with my boys. I took a bad fall and ended up with a concussion and vertigo. The doctors told me to stay in a dark room. No screens, no reading, no meetings, no work. Instead, I got back on video calls because there was a major negotiation I felt that I couldn't step away from. Looking back, I can see how upside down my thinking had become. I believed work couldn't wait. Somehow, I thought my recovery could. That decision cost me months of healing. I wore sunglasses inside. Our house stayed quiet because light and noise made everything worse. For the first time, I couldn't ignore what was right in front of me. I wasn't just watching other people sacrifice themselves for work. I was doing it too. The third wake-up call came during COVID. For the first time in years, life slowed down. There were no commutes, no in-person meetings, no rushing from one thing to the next. For the first time in a long time, there was room to think. Like so many people, our family was suddenly home together all the time. One night, after the boys had gone to bed, my husband and I were standing in the kitchen talking. I don't even remember what started the conversation. I just remember everything I'd been holding in finally came out. I started crying. I looked at him and said, "Honestly, I don't even think I'd want to live with me right now." He looked surprised. He reached over, brushed the hair out of my face, and asked, "What are you talking about?" I told him I didn't like who I had become. I snapped at our boys over little things. I was stressed out about work all the time. When he and I had time together, I spent so much of it talking about work instead of talking with him. It felt like work had followed me into every part of my life. The hardest part was that I wasn't just hurting myself. I was hurting the people I loved the most. And then another thought hit me. What if my boys grew up believing this was normal? What if they thought being successful meant being stressed all the time? What if they grew up believing work was supposed to steal your peace, your health, and your relationships? I didn't want that for them. And if I didn't want it for them, why was I accepting it for myself? That night became a turning point. Not because I suddenly had all the answers. I didn't. But for the first time, I admitted something I had been avoiding. The life I had built no longer matched the life I wanted. I had spent years working hard to build this successful career. Somewhere along the way, I stopped paying attention to who I was becoming. I realized my biggest problem wasn't my job. It was the place work had taken in my life. I had put it at the center of everything. It got the best of my attention, the best of my energy, the best of my thinking. Everything else got what was left over. No wonder I felt so torn inside. The next question was obvious. If work wasn't supposed to come first, what was? I grabbed a piece of paper and started writing. My faith, my health, my marriage, my boys, then my work. I stared at that list for a long time. Then it hit me. That wasn't the order I was living. Those were the things I said mattered most, but they weren't getting the best of me. Work was. That wasn't anyone else's fault. It was mine. And that was actually good news, because if I had built my life that way, I could build it differently. I didn't need a different company. I didn't need a different boss. I needed a different way of living. I didn't know exactly what that looked like yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't willing to keep living the way that I had been. I just had no idea where to begin. A few weeks later, something happened that I never could have planned. One night, I was doing what I had done so many nights before. I was scrolling. Honestly, I wasn't looking for anything. I was just trying to escape my reality for a little while. Then I came across a woman talking about life in a completely different way than I had ever heard before. She was talking about how to be a better believer, a better wife, a better mom, a better businesswoman. She wasn't talking about working less. She was talking about living differently. I had never heard of coaching before. I honestly didn't even know it was a profession. But something about what she said made me stop scrolling. It felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in a long time, I caught myself thinking, what if there really is another way? I started listening to everything I could. I read her book. I joined her virtual programs. I kept learning. Little by little, something started changing. Not my circumstances, my thinking. I realized I had spent years learning how to build a career. I'd earned degrees, taken leadership courses, learned strategy, finance, operations, and management. But no one had ever taught me how to build a work and life that worked together. No one had ever taught me how my mind worked. No one had ever taught me how much control I actually had over the way that I experienced my work. It felt like someone had handed me the owner's manual to a part of my life that I had been fumbling my way through. For the first time, I realized I wasn't at the mercy of my thoughts or my emotions. I could learn to change them. That realization gave me hope. Not because everything suddenly became easy, it didn't, but because I finally believed that things could change. So, I made a decision. Instead of waiting for life to get better, I was going to become someone who could build a better life. I hired my first coach. Hiring that coach was one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I didn't do it halfway. I went all in. Nobody could do the work for me, but someone could show me a better way. I showed up. I did the work. I asked hard questions. I practiced new habits. Slowly, things started changing. I wasn't carrying work around with me all day. I was more patient with my boys. My husband got more of the best version of me. I laughed more. I had more energy. I started feeling like myself again. Then I realized something that surprised me. The goal wasn't to care less about my work. It was to stop asking my work to be my everything. When work was in its proper place, I actually enjoyed it more. I showed up better. I led better. I thought more clearly. And when I came home, I was finally home. It started feeling more like the life that I had been looking for all along. Things didn't change overnight. It happened one decision at a time. The first thing I changed was what came first. For years, work had been getting the best of me, the best of my energy, my attention, and my thinking, and everyone else got whatever was left over. I didn't want to live that way anymore. So I started each morning differently. Before I checked my phone, before I opened my email, before the world started making demands of me, I spent time with God. I prayed. I got quiet. That became my foundation. Life didn't suddenly get easy. It definitely didn't. But I finally had something steady to stand on. Then I became a student again. I learned from my coach. I joined her mastermind. I traveled to immerse myself in this whole new world of neuroscience. I kept stretching myself. When she invited me to train as a coach, I said yes. At the time, I had no plans to become a coach. I just knew these tools were changing my life. I wanted to understand them as deeply as I could. I also started taking better care of myself. I stopped treating food and wine like an escape. I made time to move my body. I started sleeping better. Little by little, I felt stronger, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Then something beautiful started happening at home. I wasn't perfect. I am still not. But I was becoming more present. We started making more memories together. Home felt different. And here's what surprised me the most. None of that hurt my career. It actually made me better at my job. I had more patience, more perspective, more energy. I made better decisions. I led people better. For years, I had believed that putting work first was the key to succeeding at work. What I found was that the opposite was true. When I put the right things first, I became better at everything else. The more I learned, the more I found myself wanting other people to experience this too. I started seeing people around me differently. I recognized myself in them. The leader who looked successful on the outside, but was quietly exhausted. The parent who couldn't be fully present because they couldn't turn off work. The high performer who thought feeling stuck was the price of having an important job. I knew those people because I had been one of them. When my coach invited me to train and get certified as a coach myself, I said yes. Not because I was planning to leave corporate. Honestly, I wasn't. I loved my career. I loved the people. I loved solving hard problems. But I also knew then that I had found something that was too important to keep to myself. So I started coaching others. At first, I coached alongside my corporate career. Evenings. Work after work. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. It didn't make sense on paper. Instead of coaching draining me, it energized me. The more I coached, the more energy I had for every other part of my life, for my family, for my corporate work, for the people I was leading. It never felt like one more thing on my calendar. It felt like I had finally found something I was made to do. It didn't feel like another job. It felt like a calling. Over time, I realized something else. The leaders sitting across from me, they weren't struggling because they lacked talent. They weren't lazy. They weren't broken. Most of them had just accepted that success required sacrifice. It was the same deal I had accepted for years. Together, we started building a better way to do work in life. One conversation at a time, one decision at a time, one leader at a time. Looking back now, I can see that the biggest change wasn't my career, it was me. My work changed because I changed. My marriage changed because I changed. My family changed because I changed. My health changed because I changed. I stopped waiting for life to get better. Instead of giving up, I doubled down on becoming the person I needed to become, the version of me who could build a better life. The amazing part is that I never had to choose between success and enjoying my life. For years, I thought that work and life were competing with each other. I was wrong. The more I became the person I wanted to be, the better I became everywhere else. As a wife, as a mom, as a leader, as a coach. Today, I have the privilege of coaching leaders around the world. Every week, I meet with people who remind me of myself years ago. Brilliant, capable, successful, but quietly believing that the stress, the pressure, and the sacrifice are simply the price of having a meaningful career. I don't believe that anymore. I've watched too many people change their relationship with work without giving up their ambition. I've watched leaders become more present at home. I've watched them become healthier, more confident, more effective. I've watched them enjoy success instead of just surviving it. That's why I care so much about this work. I care because I want people to know there is another way. You don't have to wait until you're burned out. You don't have to wait until your health forces you to slow down. You don't have to wait until your relationships begin to suffer. You can choose differently now. If any part of my story sounded like yours, I hope you won't wait as long as I did. Because the life you've built doesn't have to be the life you keep living. That's why I do what I do. I want to help people build work that they love so they have more energy for the people they love. That's the movement I'm creating to work differently. One leader, one family, one conversation at a time. And if you're listening today and thinking, something about this feels familiar, I'd love to help. That's exactly what we do in coaching. We figure out where you are now, we get clear on where you want to go next, and together we build a plan to get there. Then I walk alongside you every step of the way, because this one life we've been given is too precious to spend simply getting through it. Let's build something better. When I graduated from high school, I chose a quote that has stayed with me all these years. A life lived in fear is a life half lived. Back then, I thought it meant having the courage to chase big dreams. Today, it means something even deeper. It reminds me not to settle for a life that looks successful on the outside while feeling disconnected on the inside. I hope this episode helps you live your life a little more fully too. Until next time.
Looking for support in applying the principles and strategies in today's episode? Sherry coaches clients one-on-one as their trusted confidant and advisor, helping each client create the work and life they had only dreamed of. To schedule your complimentary career strategy session, go to sherrygregoff.com/apply to book time with her today. It's one simple step that can change everything.